very beginning of book 1, the persona speaking. In the mid part of the moon I stood, in the midst of the Sea of Tranquility, looking around me from rim to curving rim, the brilliant moonscape against the blackest space, stark blackness, polarities of light and night, where a human footstep marked a giant leap forward in lunar dust for all mankind. Footsteps still all about, undisturbed, untouched by decades of time, destined to remain for all time, eternity, or as near to it as we can imagine. Unlike what Robinson Crusoe found, an ephemeral footprint on a beach. Here with instruments and a flag unfurled in the solar wind, half a lunar module, the descent platform left far behind, the glory of the moon in all creation. And then I saw him sitting upon his nag, Rosinante, Don Quixote, a lance resting across his saddle as he leaned forward from next to a crater, gazing my way. First, shock overwhelmed me, finding myself where I was, disoriented, disbelieving, how could it be? I stood there without an encumbering spacesuit, lightly clad in my old corduroy jacket, worn beyond its prime, breathing in the atmosphere of the moon. The man of La Mancha plodded slowly on his nag, even as I began to realize we were not alone. A crowd of people were coming toward me too. How could they have gotten here as well, I wondered. My own presence and Cervantes, still a mystery, unexplained, beyond belief, amazement, deeply stirring, shaking my very being, as I recalled my flight to the moon. A creaking leather saddle woke me further to his nearness, as he leaned closer to me, looking annoyed, eyeing me from his mount. So you finally made it up here. What's taken you so long? We've all been waiting for you. Here they come. Snap out of it and collect your wits. At the head of a throng of people massing across the Sea of Tranquility, I began to discern other old friends, long known but never met face to face, only in ink, the printer's art, or used to be. In the front of the crowd, drawing near, I saw Dufu wrapped in Confucian reserve and robe. Exiled, forced to wander and beg, seeking food, crumbs at the door of the great, hoping for an appointment from the emperor, dreaming of a great man who would bring down the river of heaven to wash away the blood of weapons, never to be used again. Flowing behind him, his robes stirred up the moon dust like a mist about his feet, standing still a distance away, saying with elevated dignity, "You who have been to Chang'an, welcome to the moon." Next to him stood Li Po, friend and fellow poet. Bai Jui followed both, a voice for the people, daring to speak of injustice to the emperor, his fame reaching all the way to distant lands far to the east, Korea and Japan, a lay Buddhist of the fragrant mountain. The scent of the same fragrance came from the Japanese poets next to him, Basho, like a monk, but the dust of the world upon him, Saigyo, a monk who left his military clan, Zeami, playwright of the court, whose plays lay bare his time, cutting through to another realm like a samurai sword. Milarepa, the Tibetan poet, clad in cotton, wrapped in selfless practice, detached but from Buddha's teaching of Dharma. Another fragrance too, rose petals and poppies, attar and rumi, the journey of the hoopoe to the samor, the beloved delirious, whirling in a vortex of longing, and Naguib Mahfouz wearing a cravat. They and many other poets flowed into the landing site. Samuel Johnson and Thomas Gray, Henry Vaughan and George Herbert, Dryden, Shakespeare and Marlowe bend beside them, jostling and pushing forward, Shelley and John Keats, William Wordsworth, Longfellow, Robert Burns looking ready still to raise a pint for old Lang Syne, his mountain daisy and rose, while Welsh bards stood on a rock with Taliesin, spreading out around, space junk left behind, between and among the old instruments, the hardware of Tranquility base. I could now see poets of the book, Job of tested patience, long suffering, Dante, the man who had been to hell, Milton, who justified the ways of God, song of the conquering evolution of the soul, the battle of good and evil, choosing through free will God's holy gift. Rumi's Indian brother, reincarnated Kabir, weaver of a Muslim Hindu cloth, warp and woof of the one, free of duality, Vyasa, Kalidasa, and Tagore, all had come from their ashrams to the moon. And standing nearby, Simlike Unini, O moon god, accept my prayer, who entered into the spirit of he who saw the deep, out of the libraries of Babylon, Sumer, raised the song of Gilgamesh and Enkidu, their journey through Mesopotamia. From every land and clime, all around they stood, poets of every continent jostling for a sight of the poet from Earth, ahead of his time, new arrival, not yet translated to the spirit of the universe. African poets and shamans, griots of ancient songs, singers of rituals, nobly held their instruments, flutes and calabashes, drums, ready to play as though Bala Faseki were about to step forward to sing the tale of Sogalan's son, Sunyata, unifier of Mali and much of the Africa of his day. And from the Americas too were tellers of tales, Hopi and Navajo, Lakota, Odawa and Iroquois, Mohican, American tribes beyond telling, Incan and Aztec, Aborigines of Australia, drums and didgeridoos, island peoples. All stood quietly on the moon, watching, pressing to see this most curious of sights, a supposed white man from the suburbs, not long from morning prayers, plunked down on the moon. Together, Merlin and Queen Mab stood before the crowd, he holding out his staff, she clothed in nature's bountiful plenty, catching the eye of many poets and seers. Speaking the thought of many present, addressing Cervantes, Merlin asked, "What is this embodied spirit doing here amongst us, disturbing the serenity of our lunar home? How can this be? Is this one of your quixotic jokes? Did you bring him here, and what's the point?" Cervantes leaned slightly back in his saddle, Rosinante snortling, giving her head a little shake, her mangy mane taking a while to resettle in low gravity. All eyes moved from Merlin to Cervantes, who replied, once peace and quiet had resumed, though how and why the heavenly realm that poets have occupied from time immemorial could be compromised, still seemed to hang upon the lips of many, glared from their eyes, full of curiosity. Cervantes, cocking back his head with authority, swept his eyes over the assembly of poets. The pressing multitude began, We have all experienced the loss of the living presence in modern times. Even those who would go backwards show loss. Our people all lose their way, bewildered, science usurping the glory of the moon, our domain where most of us dwell even now. Just look around at all the trash the astronauts and scientists left behind, scattered about the beauty of this plane. All man's science and technology cannot understand the moon, mighty symbol of eons, visible sign uplifting men's eyes to the heavens. You all know I speak the truth. Many of our people, and even some of us, cling to nostalgia, but it is not the same as that deep experience of the divine. Lifting his lance into the air, waving it about, Rosinante leaping apace, raising her forelegs, Cervantes exclaimed, "Obey, Lord Apollo, I challenge you! I call here a parliament of poets."